So, um, what we're gonna try to roll into is tonight. I've got a couple faces that probably don't really need much of an introduction, but we're going to be joined by Ikslagor, Jadii, and Forget My Face from Hard Knocks, Shekelsquad, and Lazerhawks, respectively. And we're going to tonight's main topic is talking about logistics and industry. So mainly, what I want to hear from these guys is how do corporations keep themselves supplied? How do they build themselves up to where they go? What works? What doesn't? What are they? What have they tried? Obviously, if people have secrets or you don't feel like sharing your, you can keep your super secret OPSEC stuff to yourself. But I'm sure this was a highly requested topic when I reached out for people asking, what do you guys want to hear about? What do we want to talk about? And so we're going to give it a shot. I figured larger corporations were more likely to have the most insight since I had no shortage of smaller C4 corps asking if they could come tell everyone about how they do industry and corp logistics in their C4s. But I think we've had enough C4 corps for a little while. So here we go with three, well, including myself, four C5 corps. Here to talk about how we build up the war machine. But before we jump into that, I just want to highlight a couple quick things that have happened really since the last episode. There's a bunch, and I didn't really get as far as I wanted to in putting a big news report together, but I'm going to try to do a little more diligence for the next one. But two things that have happened over this month, actually, since the last episode, one of which you might not have even heard about, really, was the first two vehements to die in Wormhole space have died. The first was part of a major brawl that if Jadii and Ix want to comment on when we get into the discussion, they can. But a very brief description. Shekelsquad tried to get a fight out of Beyond the Last Horizon. Caps were dropped. Lots of ships died. Pos Party and Hard Knocks were called in to help finish off the capitals. Shekelsquad held the field for quite a while. Actually, I'm really sad that I was at work and didn't see their ping because they did ask us, and we might have been able to come die with them. So the first vehement to die in Wormhole space died to mainly a Hard Knocks fleet with Shekel and Posby support at that point. But just a couple days ago, and if some random person hadn't posted this onto Reddit, I don't think I would have even known about it, is a vehement actually got destroyed in an azbel's corp hangar on November 2nd. Soviet Union lost an azbel to a bunch of Tech 1 cruisers that just killed the azbel with absolutely no resistance for all 3 days. So there was that's a lie. There's a little resistance on the last day, but the AAR can be found on Reddit. I'll have the link included in on this post when it goes up on YouTube and the podcast website as well. But so two of them are dead. I guess now what we'll have to look forward to is, we'll be really looking forward to when are we going to start lose some of the other faction capitals. I guess my order doesn't match, does it? So from left to right that I have on my slide, which does not match the list from top to bottom that I had in the first. Does Jadii, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? I'm not sure if Shekel really needs an introduction, but you can describe them however you'd like.
Sure, I'm Jadii. I'm one of the first couple guys that kind of started up with Shekel, and was newer to Eve at the time. As I kind of got more into wormhole space, did more things, I found that logistics was tough, and we needed more stuff to be self-sufficient. So I kind of moved to fill that role since it was something we needed. So I'm currently working as a large part of the Shekel industry and logistics. That's why I'm here. That's about all the introduction I think I'm good with.
All right. I'll
Yeah, sure. I've been playing Eve since, 2009, and I've been in Wormhole since around 2012. I flew with Kill It With Fire before Lazerhawks in a corp called Lead Farmers. We were actually in an alliance with Hard Knocks at the time, which is a fun fact most people probably don't know. And then that split up, and I was one of the first members of Lazerhawks, and I've been flying with them for the most part, for the better part, since the beginning of that corp. I do just about everything in game. I actually don't do a lot of industry, but living in W space, I have to do a lot of logistics, and I've kind of seen how all our guys do it. I'm more into the PvP and farming side of things, but hopefully I can have some insights.
Great. I'm looking forward to hearing some of your insight. I know you're a face that I have not forgotten that I've known about for quite a while. So last but not least by far, Ikslagor, do you want to tell us a little about yourself and Hard Knocks if you feel they need anything?
Hi, I'm Ix. Most famous thing I've done in Eve is ram an AT frigate into a Hector. And Hard Knocks, I think everybody knows us. We own and rent out C6 space. Contact me in game for rates.
Sounds good. All right. So hopefully the microphones are working a bit better. I tweaked the volumes as you guys were talking. So I guess the first question that I'd like to just pose, and I'm gonna probably just direct these generally, and you guys can feel free to chip in if you've got something or not. So at what point inside of your corporations did you guys start to have a person, a team, or really anything put together that kind of was people working to help supply the corporation in general? I know, you hear people be like, oh, I'm the logistics director for insert corp here all the time, but I feel like at a small enough size, it doesn't really make sense. You can get away with everyone just doing their own thing, but as you grow, the force multiplier, and it just kind of starts to make a little more sense to just try to help each other out a bit. You get better results, I guess, when everybody's doing helping just a little bit. So when do you guys think that you started to have any sort of role or work going into corp logistics?
For Hawks, I know kind of since day one. We had come from another corp that was pretty well organized for the most part, and we all we didn't have our own ideas about how we wanted to do logistics at the start, but we just took over our old corp's way of doing things and then tweaked it, for the way that we needed to do stuff. Along the way, but I would say it's definitely helped us grow it from day one, having a good idea of the kind of work that went into, back then, running all the POSs and things we needed, but from the very start for us.
Yeah, I think same thing for Hard Knocks. We have had a lot of people come in from Null over the years, so we had a large exodus of BL dudes who came in, and Muha used to run the BL reaction farms, and so taking over running Wormhole pauses was a much easier task for him when he came in. But we've always had people who play this game at a really high level in our leadership, and so they understand logistics and they understand how it makes or breaks a war machine.
Yeah, I'd say for Shekel, it's that was more of a learning curve, because when we were coming to Wormhole space, most of us were just new. Like myself and Keep, for example, were about a month into the game. We played in low sec, and we really quickly started finding out the need for logistics, because as a much smaller corp at the time, we ended up, running into tons of situations during fights. Basically, was the big thing where it's like, hey, I need X ship, or I need this, I need that, whatever, and we just didn't have it. And like, well, I guess we can't take the fight then, and that always sucks. Like, it's the worst to say, like, I'm sorry, members and everybody else here, but can't go take that content because we're not prepared. So, like, as that need became, like, very apparent, we ended up building on that a bit more.
So Shekelsquad, as I hear, and I guess you can tell us about it. Shekel has a large central kind of bank of ships, right? You guys have a very centralized assortment of ships that you hand out to people they use. How would you describe the ratio of people are expected to have and buy their own ships, bring them in, versus the Corp is going to take care of some of these things for you?
Okay, we do not have a large central bank of ships, for the record. We provide free Guardians in lobby.
Is that because Steel took them all, or you guys just don't have that anymore?
Spicy.
No, that was way back. Like, when we were first examining what things we should do for logistics, or to have dudes have ships right away, we ended up putting ships in Corp hangars, and it would basically just be, people grabbing the wrong stuff. I mean, once again, much smaller back then, but it just ended up in a lot of poor situations that we would have liked. Plus, obviously, in Corp hangars, you risk having it all stolen. So that actually ended up getting limited down to all Guardians. And Scimitars and Friglogi was basically the free hangars that we pull up right now. What we do have in lieu of that, however, which is a lot more, I think, organized, is we have a very large fit ship contract market that's just about on Jadii price. And what we do for that is we, fully fit up the ship, the ammo, like, just have it all ready to go, so that the second somebody needs a ship for a fight and they don't have it in their own hangar, instead of out asking, like, hey, somebody lend me with whatever, and that has its all other end of issues, and I'm sure many corps that are listening in have dealt with that. We just have them, duplicates of all of our doctrines, up on contract, and we have like 100 some ships up generally at a time, just so that people are always able to get into what we need for the fight.
Do you find that the value of your ships changes too often enough that contracts can be a pain, though? I know in my corp, we consider doing the contracts for a little while, but maybe I've just got a bunch of nitpickers, but they complained that, altering the price of a contract is, you've got to delete it and re-up it completely. You can't just go in and edit it. Enough that, the fluctuations in value of our ships, that we opted to not go that route. Do you guys just kind of eat those price changes, or do you just not view them as major at all?
We don't even change them. It's the normal pricing scheme that is generally put up is 5 mil flat for hauling in destroyer, 10 for cruiser, 15 battle cruiser, and 35 battleship. Just flat on the top of exactly what we paid it done. Generally, those would be like buy orders and stuff that makes it cheaper there. Plus, we build a lot of the hulls in a hole, so I'm not going to go into the industry portion on that. But generally, it's pretty comparable to Jadii price, and honestly, from what I've experienced, if you leave it up, it'll get bought eventually, regardless of the price. Because I look at my contract history, for example, and sure, there's like sparse contract buys here or there, like all the time. You get a few a day. But when you really see like a mass contract buy, it's going to be, hey, we're taking a fight right now, and we need this. You'll just see 10 ships fly off the contracts of exactly what they need for the fight. And at that point in time, actually, price is not as huge of a factor, I'd say, just because of the fact that
I need it now.
People want content. Yeah, I need it now. Sums that up entirely.
Can anybody in your corp just kind of bring in a doctrine ship and throw it up on contracts?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's actually heavily encouraged, because like originally I started it with just VNIs. Like it was a super cheap 100-dimension VNI, but like we were running into problems where people just didn't have ships. So I'm like, whatever. It's not going to be too bad on my wallet to just put VNIs up there for like 5 mil up, and then we'll have people at least undocking something. And
do you ever run into issues with quality control of those? I guess maybe I'm just a pessimist, and maybe TDSyn just has lower quality individuals than some of your groups. But I've tried letting people be responsible for fitting and bringing in some of their own stuff sometimes, and it doesn't necessarily always end well. Like I would be concerned about just like going into contracts and like, oh, I need a Loki right now, and I'm not convinced that all the Lokis on contracts would be fit right.
Generally, they're labeled doctrine, and so that's what people are expected to bring in. Like non-doctrine stuff doesn't really sell. It'll say on the contract like, hey, this is a armor ham Loki from doctrine. Like that's pretty standard. But I haven't actually run into too many. Like, I mean, like sometimes people when they're leaving will put up like optional fits and they'll sell them, and some of them are a little subpar. But for the most part, they're all doctrine, and it's all already basically corp approved. But we haven't run into that issue at all.
I people on Twitch are telling me I'm being too mean to my own corp, but I think Face probably remembers this, or everyone probably does. Like we fought Lazerhawks and Sleipnirs and Hurricane Fleet issues the other. I think it was earlier this week, or maybe it was last week already. Lost track of time, but somebody had blasters on the Hurricane.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I mean,
one.
like it just wasn't effective, you got to try out these things sometimes, but that might have been one of those things that you probably could have said it wasn't going to work without needing to test. So, do Hawks and Hard Knocks have similar things, or do you guys just see lots of people bringing in doctrine stuff and just slapping it up on contract?
I mean, for Hawks, contracts are not like our members are responsible for their fit, and like our SRP hinges on whether the ship was fit properly or not, and also like if you just want to get roasted in Slack for the rest of your life, you can fit your ship wrong. It's mostly the roasting that like convinces people to do things properly, but yeah, I mean we build a ton of stuff in home, and then we also have people leaving corp all the time, like people who have like 20 Sleipnirs for no reason, just putting them up on contracts, selling them, like just a lot of like excess, people wanting to buy new stuff, trading ships, all of that stuff. We don't worry about whether a ship on contract is doctrine fit or not. If it shows up on a kill mail and it's not doctrine fit, they're not getting SRP, and that's kind of the end of it. We don't really worry about it past that. But yeah, like we have tons of contracts in home. A bunch of our guys bring stuff in all the time, and we also make a ton of our doctrine stuff in home. So it's like, it's pretty. Our market is pretty bumping.
Yep.
So Ishi does things a little bit differently. I mean, like the use of shame to shame people into making sure that they have the right fits. That's pretty standard, I think. But we don't really have much of an active market rage. And I think that this gets more to our recruiting standards than anything else, is that if you pass your trial, the expectation is that you're not retarded, and you can, go on to our forums, or we actually have in Slack where you like type in a command and it will show you all the fits for all of our doctrines. And so there's really no excuse. Like, everybody knows what the doctrines are, and you are responsible for having all of your own doctrine ships. And if your fit doesn't match doctrine, you don't get SRP. And you're gonna get roasted, like Face said. But for us, it's more about like we expect people to be confident. When you're playing the game at a certain level, like, you're expected to be able to handle your own stuff. But it is a community effort. Part of it goes back to scanning a lot and making sure that, if we find a really good high sec, we'll ping Corp Slack and let people know that, like, hey, we just had a big heavy armor fight. We know, we lost some guards, or we lost some guardians. Now's a good time to go out and get it. And everybody has a hauling alt, so people help out. There's a lot of conversation when you get like that amazing 3 from Jadii. and everybody's like, oh yeah, hey, pick me up YZ, and put up a contract for me. So, we tend to be a little bit more self-sufficient. At the same time, like, people help out and try to make everything run together.
We have similar as far as like basic hauling goes, and a lot of people bring in their own ships too. It's just the contract market I find helps ensure that those that don't have the whole doctrine list in their hangars can or have the accessibility for it. I think at least as far as because I mean you're talking about HK logistics, whereas I'd say our method would be a little more comfortable to say for like low class corps that are having difficulty in having ships on hand. Like, it doesn't even have to be someone's personal pool. You could just like set aside some corp money in a specific wallet for it and say like, okay, we're gonna rotate this, do a couple sites and say we're gonna rotate this 3 bill on corp contracts. That way you always have stuff to go out in.
So, I guess I'll dig at this one just a little bit and see where it goes. You mentioned that your corp SRPs ships only if they were fit correctly, which both makes perfect sense. But so when it comes down to SRPing the ships for your corp phase, do you guys build those in-house to make it more affordable, or do you just have a pile that's, at some point somebody brought in and you have them ready to hand out? Or, well, I guess, are you handing out replacement ships, or are you handing out replacement ISK?
It's a bit of both. It depends on like what the markets are doing and what we have in home. We build all our doctrine ships in home. Like there's any ship that we fly doctrine will like at least produce some of those hulls in home. They're not on like a corp level, they're on an individual level. So those guys are doing it for profit. But it usually ends up being about 10% under Jadii price anyway by the time it hits contracts. But that being said, sometimes we'll just pass out ISK. Like just, hey, this is market price, toss the fit into e-appraisal and shoot a MISC for it. Especially things like Guardians and stuff like that, where they're going to have to buy the whole fit. We're not going to hold the whole fit in home. We're just going to send a MISC and get them to replace it as soon as possible.
And for HK, it's just a straight ISK transfer. We just pay people when they die.
Yeah, our SRP is the same. We do ISK transfer.
Yeah, I would say the majority of ours is as well, but things like T3s and stuff like that, we build it all in-house, so we'll just contract that over instead.
Yeah, we do the same. It's just a heads up for viewership. Like, okay, so take Loki's for example. I think they were up at like 230 mil in Jadii. I think they're down to 200 now. They can be built for about 125. Real talk. It's that much of a difference. So like if you get industry guys to build it in your home that are actually into doing reactions and stuff like that, so they can split that difference 50-50 and still give you a low-key 35 mil under Jadii and make profit.
So would you guys say that this is what it sounds like, at least, that in all three of your cases, you guys don't necessarily have a centralized industry or logistics team or structure that's designed around getting these ships built and replaced and brought into home, as much as you just have kind of people working independently, generally for profit, that are just kind of corralled a little bit into making their money through supporting the larger efforts?
Kinda. Like, we do have like a corp spreadsheet of who's got the capabilities to produce what, and generally when the corp contracts get low on a certain hull type, we'll keep an eye out on it and say like, hey, can you throw a bunch of these on the cooker to have out in like a couple days so that I can bring in the fits and fit them up for contracts. So that is a little more organized.
I mean, I don't want to give the impression that HK doesn't have an organized logistics team, because we very much do, and Greenco will kill me if I don't mention that our fearless logistics director is a world-class hauler. But it's not around building the SRP. The logistics for HK is much more about like, do we have the right structures set up? Are they fueled? Is everything online that needs to be online? Do we have all the right industry? it's much more of a we'll create a sandbox, or the logistics team creates this sandbox for people to play with. And what you choose to do with that, it's entirely up to you. If you want to produce things and sell them in Rage, you're welcome to. If you don't, hey, we roll our chain and scan enough that Jadii or Amar is never that far away.
Yeah.
How long would you guys say that it takes you to actually find a usable high sec to do some of that hauling in from the moment you guys decide that you want to? Something I think I'd love to just kind of put out there that a lot of people I think don't recognize is that with a larger corp and an organized group, the fact that you're living in some wormhole space that is, infinitely far away from your K-space markets really doesn't seem to defer many of us from keeping ourselves fairly well supplied. I've had people ask before about, how do we get ships built and ammo stocked up, and it's like, so so let's say you guys decide right now that you want to you need to go get the high sec, go bring in some ammo or whatever from a market. How long is it going to take you, assuming you've got to scan out your entire chain, on average, to actually go find a high sec?
Say 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, I'd say under 20 minutes.
Definitely.
We can get deep dicked by RNG, but most of the time, it's 20 minutes. Sometimes it'll be Mimitar high sec after Mimitar high sec after Mimitar high sec, and take us an hour. But it's 20 minutes or less if, even if when we have one guy scanning.
Yeah, and one of the things, I definitely think under 30 minutes is a fair expectation, and one of the things that we do is, like I said, if we find a freighterable high sec that's close to Jadii or Amar, basically the chain gets frozen until the logistics team have had the opportunity to use it, and if they don't need it, then we'll roll it away. But otherwise, we try to save those really valuable holes so that Corp can get what it needs.
You gotta, you find them sometimes, and you're
absolutely.
you just need to. So, how close is close enough for you to decide this high sec is workable and we'll do the hauling we need to with this? Because I think another trap that I myself have personally fallen into plenty of times is you get that high sec and you're like, it's kind of okay, but I'm sure we can do better, and then you spend forever actually finding something better as opposed to the high sec you already had.
Yeah, I'm happy with
Probably
a sub
keep something
10
under
Jadii.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 is
Like,
usually a good threshold.
If it's really got to get hauled, but to touch on it a little bit more, our strategy is not necessarily we need a high sec right now. It's hey, there's a good high sec in chain, and then everyone's hauling through it all the time. It's getting de-stabbed with DST armies. If there's not content in the chain and there's a decent high sec, and then it's all right, everything's de-stabbed, it's chain's garbage, let's roll again. And then we find another high sec, we might haul. We find PvP, we PvP. But it's if a chain exists with a decent high sec, it's not just our logistics dudes, not just the people who are have DST armies, but all of our members are constantly moving stuff in and out of it.
Yep.
Do you guys see the refineries changing the way your corps handle and do anything from industry to logistics substantially in your wormholes?
Yes. Actually, the moon mining, when it actually does hit, is going to be amazing.
You're going to become a mining corp, basically.
It's, a lot of people are in for it just because, just the sheer amount of ore that we import every month is just very, very large, especially with, say, capital production. So having the ability to source that in whole and not be subject to prices on that is going to be extremely useful. It's probably going to drop quite a bit of the prices on our home.
Yeah, I already know that a lot of our people have already expressed interest in getting into metal production and stuff once the ability to mine large quantities of the basic ores in W space becomes available.
In regards to...
I know that's definitely a bottleneck for us too. Go on, sorry.
No, yeah. Do you guys foresee, are you guys planning on doing Tech 2 stuff now that you can have a refinery that's kind of much easier to run the different reactions that you might have needed? Do you also think that you guys will be more able to even add Tech 2 ships? I mean, I think one of the biggest disappointments I generally have is when I love to imagine mining and building all this stuff in-house, but then you realize the reality is, like, none of us use Tech 1 ships as much as we do Tech 3s or Tech 2s. Both of which are substantially more complex, and I don't know if you guys were running passes, running moon reactions in your wormholes. We used to, but it was just, at least for myself and the people that were doing it, we decided it was too much work. So the ability to start doing that again, I imagine, is going to, I foresee a lot of different people getting more involved with the Tech 2 production. I mean, we go through heavy assault cruisers and command ships fairly frequently out here, and if I can start building them in home, at least more of that chain. We'll never be able to mine the moon goo in here, but I know that if you're willing to put the effort in, you can always get those ships a lot cheaper if you did more of the steps yourself.
Yeah, no, it's, as far as that goes, like, I don't know how much everybody's looked into the new skills. For example, like, I got my refining tune already training up all the new T2 ore skills, which are 7.5 million SP, by the way, 4 months on, like, max speed. Have fun, guys. But one thing that I was really hoping for on this lifeblood change was that the new T2 ores would be compressible, because as was previously, as far as T2 ships go, like, it was a slight cost savings to haul in and build yourself, but the size of the T2 materials was generally about the same size as the ship that you were building, so it really didn't save you hauling effort at all. It was actually a total pain. So I was hoping that they compress the T2 materials now. I think the ore is slightly smaller than previously if you're hauling it in, but there's no compression yet that I'm aware of, which would be the best option, I think, for us. So we'll see what CCP does with that.
I think HA has a different take to this, right? Is that, like, the focus on Corp is making sure that our individual members are wealthy so that they can afford to do whatever they want in EVE. And for a lot of our guys, if that you look at the time spent hauling, doing the refinery, setting everything up, a lot of our dudes would much rather just have a bare hole and farm a bunch more sites and just pay the ISK, because it's a lot easier to generate ISK than it is to, like, learn industry and then get it set up. And I think that's the attitude that we see a lot in Corp. We do have people who make T2 ships in Rage. I think Sabers are the most popular thing that we build in Rage. I don't know if anybody makes anything other than those.
Yeah, admittedly, I don't know a ton about how the changes are going to mix things up, but we have guys right now making lots of T2 ships. We make all of our Sabers in-house because we whelp a lot of Sabers, and it does save a bit of ISK, even for the effort that it takes to do all that. But yeah, I mean, we make command ships, we make Sabers, all of that in-house. So unless it makes it worse, then I'm sure it's only going to make it better for us. Like, well, obviously, but unless it makes it worse, we're going to continue doing it, and probably on a larger scale.
Yeah, same thing. We basically just source all of ours on the whole as well. And then even, like, aside from Tech 2 stuff, the other T1 stuff that's used, for example, say Balgorns or any of the faction T1s that you'd run across, generally you can go get the off of Jadii contracts, and like, it takes a minimal amount of T1 ore, and you can build that for cheaper, like generally anywhere from like 15 to 50 mil on the battleships, cheaper to build in whole than actually just buying one. Plus you could haul in 12 at a time worth of ore compared to hauling in one battleship at a time with DST. It logistically makes so much more sense to go and do that.
Do you guys think that we're going to end up seeing an influx of people out in Wormhole space come December with the changes? Do you think we're going to manage to attract industrial corps and convince them to come out here if they can come do, moon fracturing in their own little wormhole?
I think some people will try it, but I don't. I mean, maybe, like, if it's convincing enough, if it's worth it. But, like, it really just. It feels like a lot of the other changes they've done to W Space, like, it doesn't It doesn't feel like enough to genuinely bring a lot of people in. Obviously, it's going to appeal to some people, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. It's going to be a drop in the bucket, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's
I think
not going to be a lot. Hey, go ahead, Ick.
I think the biggest problem is that it's still W space, right? So you still have to be active, you have to be scanning your chain, you have to be rolling your chain, you have to make sure that you're not going to get logged off skied when you have 8 Rorks on grid. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into, especially if you just want to bear, right? Like if you don't really want to live in W space, you just want to bear and like build stuff in W space. It's a lot of work. You can't fight back. There's never going to be anybody who can come save you, and I think Null will always have the edge in that regard.
Definitely. And then the holes that do get taken are not going to be like, I'd say all the corps here would look forward to more people moving into C5 space, because that's where we fight and go and do things. Like that's where we look for a lot of our content. Whereas as far as this industry goes, I'd say that if industry corps were moving in, they would not touch C5 space. They would be in 1s, 2s, and 3s with a high sec static, because that only makes sense.
Well, I guess
it'll be 3 high secs.
We can hope at least
that
that the ore value is going to the ore compositions would improve as you climb up the ladder, but I don't know. I mean, we have pretty much no details. I don't know about I don't know about your corps really, but I know on my end I've got a lot of dudes that are looking forward to throwing refineries up everywhere and having mining all over the place. But I guess the really big question mark is going to end up being like, how much are the moons even going to be worth? Because previously in nullsec at least, which may or may not be a good place to compare to, there were plenty of moons out in null and lowsec that like the value that you'd get out of them was so low that you aren't even going to it's not even worth the fuel, which is I guess hard to think about, because that comes out. I mean, a small refinery. Running the moon laser on that thing, I want to say it's like somewhere between 70 and 80 million ISK worth of fuel blocks. Like, I can't even imagine what an ore belt that doesn't cover at least the monthly fuel bill looks like. So, if we operate under that assumption, I mean, there's plenty of wormholes out there that have triple-digit moons. I don't know what'll happen to those, or what I guess is a special question that I'd love to just hear everybody's 2 cents on, and maybe in several months we can laugh back at this particular conversation. Do you ever think anyone's going to end up fighting over the moons in wormhole space?
I don't think so.
No, not really at all.
I don't think that they're going to be valuable at all. Like, I've kind of thought about it in my head, and maybe they've released more figures on this, and I'm living in ignorance, have they? Like, about how much ISK per hour it might be? They haven't, right?
I don't think anything. Yeah.
Let's assume it hasn't, but like it's gonna be real low. Like I'm calling it right now. It's gonna be real low. Like if you've already got rorquals and you're already mining out every belt that spawns in your home, then mining out the nice rocks and the moons when they pop might be worth it for you. But like, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near the amount of ISK per hour that people would start forming like Rorqual armies. I'd love for groups, to put 20 Rorquals in a C1. I'd love to gank that. I'd love to wrap my head around the problem and seed it and gank them. But I don't think the change is going to be interesting for us. I don't think like there's going to be all these new people to kill. Like we might, hey, Exukis, if you guys start mining in your home, we might roll in and dunk on you, and it'll be fun, and we'll appreciate that content. But like, it's not going to change the landscape, I don't believe.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it'll be a good content generator. I know that we've rolled into actually Shekel, and I think we tackled a Shekel Rourke, and we got a fight out of it, right? Like that was the best part about it, and hopefully we'll see more things like that. But I think from an industry perspective, even if it's not profitable, I think some people will do it. Like, it will definitely be more Rorqual mining in Rage, because it'll be great to be able to do, like, to blend large quantities of those basic ores so that we can build more caps, because we always need more caps. And we won't really care if it's profitable, per se, because we're doing it for the convenience factor. But if people are doing it to, like, be profitable and the other thing about wormhole logistics, especially capital wormhole logistics, is that you never really know where you're going to be able to like sell that bed or that carrier that you built, right? So the good thing would be, you get a direct low in your home and you just warp it over, stick it in a station, and put it up on contracts. But that's not always possible. And if you need a return on your investment in a timely fashion, industry and wormholes never will really make sense.
Right.
At least it's for capitals.
Yeah, at least for capitals.
Yeah, I guess it's an interesting thought that you're just trading time you would spend hauling for time you're in belt with a Rorqual, in the safety of your home.
I think
instead of ship spinning, shooting the shit on comms, people will be out Rorqual mining, shooting the shit on comms.
I mean, if you know what you're doing, wormhole space mining can generally be pretty safe. In which I guess I'm hearing I think a healthy level of pessimism here, in that we're all like, yeah, CCP is going to add stuff, but nobody here thinks it's going to end up being that big or that great, which is a bummer, because I also imagine we can all agree that we would love it if the moon mining changes brought lots of people in that we could go gank and blow up, and mining corps and indie corps moving in, but I guess it
Can
sounds
you
like
imagine the tiers though if they added like wormhole mining that was equal ISK per hour to nullsec mining?
Oh my god.
Oh, they would.
Like,
the
on
null
the
bears
same,
would
like,
cry
consistent-
so hard.
well, I
Yeah,
mean, they
like,
could, honestly.
It's impossible that they would do it though. Like, I know that they could. I think, and I know it. Like, I mean, you hear that fallacy or that strawman argument or whatever you want to call it, man, where people are always like, "Oh, well, you're so safe in your wormhole, and we have all these dangers out here in nullsec." But it's like, and we all know that's a bunch of bullshit. But like, most players don't know that's a bunch of bullshit, and there would be way too many tiers if they gave us that. There's no way they'll give us anything nice.
And that also goes to I think a fundamental disconnect between your average nullsec line member and your average W space line member, is that we understand that we're not safe, and that we're always at risk of somebody rolling in and not being able to defend ourselves, but nullsec just doesn't believe that. Like, they just don't they don't understand how wormholes work, because let's be honest, it's a lot more complicated than null. But they also they just don't. They think that it's kind of like null is the end game, right, for them, and so why isn't null the most profitable place to be?
That sums it up pretty much. You run into people all the time that just have very, very little idea of how wormhole mechanics at all, so they think that, like, oh, we rolled all of our connections and we're safe. Like, the equivalent of bubbling up gates, except the whole gate's gone. That sounds wonderful to them. But that's, not what happens at all. Especially in spaces that are more contested. Like C5 space is going to have multiple C5 corps that are rolling. I'd say, just at least from a Shekel perspective, we do a couple hundred rolls a day out of the 500-ish 5 wormholes, so there was a little over 500. So the odds of getting rolled into, I don't know how much HK and Lazerhawks roll, I imagine it's a similar number, if not more. And that's, any one of those rolls could be the wormhole you're mining in.
So the solution is we all just make C4 space mining corps, is what you're saying.
Whoa. Delete C4.
Oh, that's be a
I would love if
concentrated
they
removal
deleted
plan.
C4.
If they deleted everything below C5, I'd be very happy.
I mean, I'd take it if they just let us bring caps into all wormholes.
I like the low class for, like, the K spaces. That's pretty cool.
I don't know, unnerf Z142s. That's nulls, right? Yeah, unnerf Z142s. Thanks.
Yep. That would be great.
I mean, I think we'd all just agree that we'd all just love it if both sides of the wormhole had the same lifetime. Why?
Actually, if we're gonna talk about like wormhole timing and stuff like that, I think the biggest thing would be, like, right now we have end of natural lifetime. If we could get like a 15-minute indicator, right? Because right now, basically, if you get an EOL hole in chain,
Like, it actually exists.
It basically.
In the database, there is another timer.
It doesn't exist in game.
Right.
It doesn't exist in game.
Like, 'cause if you've ever looked on, Elitha or whatever, I still have this every so often. Somebody asks me about when this timer is. This like the wormhole is about to disappear into the ether or something. I've never seen it, and I mean, for the most part, when I decide that I've never seen something in wormhole space, that generally means it doesn't happen. But
Okay, I have a quick question here, just for people. Okay, so you know how, like, living in wormhole space, you're familiar with an EOL wormhole. Like, I could see it on site the second I land, because you can see it's like a little more wobbly. I have heard people say like, "Oh, that looks really EOL," or like, that looks like it's almost done being EOL. Is that just like a fallacy that people are making up in their
I
heads?
have heard a lot of that,
bullshit.
but I don't
Because
have
that's-
any data to suggest it. That I don't
Can't
think.
tell.
I mean,
No way.
I've
It's
never
just a
tried.
bunch of shit.
That's
Yeah.
what it seems like. I'm just throwing some confirmation out there, because like I hear people
I think
saying, I'm like,
definitely
"Yeah,
people want to
yeah.
assume that works because like roughly with math you can be like, oh, the wormhole's gotten smaller, so it's closer to closing. So they want to imagine that the wobblier the wormhole is, the sooner it's going to close. But I am unaware of any such actual change. Like, I think we'd be giving CCP too much credit if the wobble actually got wobblier as it got closer to
I
closing.
agree with that. It's just I hear
Yep.
people say it, and I'm like, I don't see that.
Like, there's some impressive shit you can do, like calling the exact region of a nullsec by looking through the hole, but looking at the wobbliness is not a thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a thing that people do, but it's not a correct thing.
It's just
People think
superstition.
they
and,
do it. They don't really do it.
Okay.
Like, when
so
we find EOL holes, we jump them, dude. Like, we're like, hey, you got fucking probes, dude? Jump that shit.
I mean-
What if there's someone running on the other side? What if there's content to be
Yeah.
had on the other side of that hole that thinks it's safe because it's EOL? Like, we jump it, probes, like, you gotta jump EOL holes. But
Yeah,
but
roll
I
the
agree,
dice.
though. That 15-minute timer would be wonderful. That being said, though, it might limit the amount of people already who bear on the other side of EOL holes. So I don't know if it's actually a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose that would get rid of a little bit of the spookiness of EO holes, because I mean, currently it is a gamble. Like, you see it and you're like, oh damn, there's two dreads here.
I
Let's
think
just do it.
Whenever you try to get into the discussion of trying to keep wormhole space a little unpredictable, I think what most people hate about EOL wormholes is just that there's no room for you to add skill or anything that makes it feel like you could have done better. Besides, you're like, well, I'm gonna jump this wormhole, because just as many times as you've jumped an EOL hole and found content and killed it on the other side, you probably have just as many instances where you jump the hole and listen to it close right behind you.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, but
or the ones
replace
where you got
skill with
you got lucky and you land and you're like, oh wow, this EOL hole is really EOL. Better, I'm gonna jump it. You try and it goes, the wormhole's collapse, and then it disappears, and you're like, oof, missed it by a second.
Yeah,
You
dodge the
just
bullet.
replace
Oh man.
skill with
Yep.
bravery, though. That's it, man. Skill
Nah,
with
That's
yeah,
wormhole
it's,
gambling, man.
I mean, do
If
any
you
of you
gamble
guys
If you
bravery
don't
is
jump
something.
do any of you guys
if you don't jump
remember
EOL holes, you won't get whatever's on the other side.
that's true? Do any of you guys remember years ago when this myth that was perpetuated for months was that you could close a wormhole by launching bombs at it?
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah. We in Lead Farmers we made a video about thermally collapsing wormholes, and we yeah, dude. I don't know if like we were just perpetuating the myth or we started it. I remember making
Yeah.
that video.
I mean, I remember.
We
I mean,
still joke a lot
CCP
about
fucked
shooting
it
a
up.
wormhole.
I mean, you remember back when the first couple incursions were done, and they were done by GMs actually like live role playing them, and they had people close the wormhole by using jamming modules on it for months, maybe over a year. I would have to listen to people asking me which jams they had to use to close the wormhole or why it's not seeming to work. And you're just face palming because you're like, CCP themselves are perpetuating nonsense about their own game mechanics. I mean,
Well,
they can post the
it's
patch
a good thing
notes,
they
right?
fired all the community team then.
Yeah, no
right?
problem. Got rid of those.
I mean, wormhole space still doesn't seem to be in agreement about how wormhole spawning mechanics work, despite it being in the literal patch notes. Like, so I'm gonna actually just because we got onto this topic, and I'd love to just throw it out there for people that are listening, so that they can try to argue. So the way wormholes work, if after you roll your static, the signature shows up. Until someone initiates warp to that wormhole, the wormhole does not actually exist. Once you have done that, it starts a timer. Fun fact, the other side of the wormhole actually already exists the moment the other side is created. There just isn't a cosmic signature for it. But drifters can still warp to that. So, other fun fact, drifters can find unspawned wormholes in your system, and you can use that to slip through to the other side. It's super lolzy. I've done it 3 times. Sadly, none of those turned into awesome stories about sneaking up on people running sites. CCP said they fixed that, but they didn't, which also probably comes as a surprise to no one. But the cosmic signature on the other side spawns only after a certain amount of time has gone through. Patch notes, I want to say, says 16 hours, or 15. After it's got less than 15 hours left, or after somebody jumps it. That's literally it. It's all from the patch notes. If you don't agree with me, you can go look at the patch notes, and that's what it says. But I don't even know how many times I have to see or read on Reddit people arguing about this, and you're just like, all right, guys, like, wormhole space is far from mysterious anymore, which is a little sad, because I think some of us, at least, you know, lived and played in wormhole space back when it truly felt like the new frontier, and you know, that everything was still unknown. But wormhole space is not very unknown anymore. Everything is out there. This is even in the patch notes. That's how wormholes work, guys. Please stop incorrectly talking about when K162 shows up. It hurts me every time. Rant over.
I'm really relieved you said all that, and it's all true, and I agree with all of it. You'd be surprised how many times we even have guys on our comms explaining wormholes wrong to people, and I fight it all the time. But it's real funny how it's literally in the patch notes. It's literally how the game's always been, and people still debate whether it works that way or not.
Yeah, the number of people who don't read the patch notes in this game is shocking. Like, when Command Destroyers came out, oh man, we had so many people screaming in local about hacks, and we boosted them off stations and stuff.
Well, I mean, some days I wish that we could return to the days of the patch notes being unhelpful and vague. Like, I used, I don't know how long all of you guys have been playing, but way back during Apocrypha, around that era, patch notes still weren't as, clear and concise, and they would be a little vaguer when it came to, game mechanics shifts and whatnot. I always loved it because you got to, argue a little bit over the patch notes, and sometimes you'd catch people that just hadn't even read them or didn't understand them. But, yeah, Command Destroyers, I mean, I'm sure there's tons of other examples of people not reading the patch notes. Every time CCP makes a change, I think one of the best things that I love about Patch Day is all the people that haven't read about those changes yet that you can take advantage of. Command Destroyers
always
were my
look
favorite.
forward to the I always look forward to the inevitable AT ship loss due to overviews not being updated.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I was so mad when they reimbursed that. Not gonna lie.
Reimburse, CC, please.
I was like, oh my goodness. I'm hurt on the inside now. Because I just loved laughing at that. Because I was like the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and his excuse was just as dumb. But, I mean,
he lost it in his Naglfar cargo.
I mean, those sites were just fun
shortly
in
after.
general. Reading the tiers about people that were like, oh my god, I run the event sites all the time and my insert retarded ship here. And this time it's sleepers and I actually tried and I got murked. CC, please. So, I guess rolling back on a couple of our tangents to one thing I did just want to kind of just say and touch up one last time. I have high hopes for the moon mining wormhole space, but I'm also not going to be surprised if it ends up being bad. Like, I know that Face, you were expecting that they're going to be almost worthless. I really hope you're wrong, because I have to imagine they're going to be worth enough that CCP can justify them even bothering, but obviously you're right, they can't make them too good or otherwise no bears are going to cry. But I mean, wormhole space makes up 4% of all the ore, so it's not, I'm not sure that if they made it a lot better, I'm not sure how much that percentage would actually move. It's not a situation I worry about where if they up the ore found in wormhole space that you're going to see the ore market collapse. I mean, we kind of already saw a bit of a market crash as is when they did the Rorqual changes, and now people are pumping out minerals like they've never before. But
yeah, I mean, I hope I'm wrong too. Like, if it's, I mean,
I
shit,
love
man,
it.
if it's over 100 mil an hour, I'll put 20 Rorquals in belt in our home, easy. But it's not going to be.
I wish. No, it's like we did some math on fuel costs. Like Shekel has 76 moons in our home, and it takes about, it was like 6.5 bill isk a month to run them. It isn't god awful, but that's pretty high for, depends on what the payout is. And then obviously that's going to be, I don't know how, that's probably a good question. How do you guys pay for your fuel? Would probably go along with logistics really well. I mean, that's all corp funded for us, so we would have to find something else to cover that kind of overhead. At least if we had it on every moon, that would be a lot.
Like in TD Sin, we'd been having a discussion about some of our people that wanted to, I think, are going to pay some sort of lease to be able to be like, this is my ore belt. But the whole thing hinges on the moons actually being worth mining.
Right.
And until we've at least gotten a dev blog or something on CC, I'm hoping that some of the moons are going to be worth it, but it's really, really hard to tell. Because, I mean, even if they're all even mediocre, just a little bit worth mining, with enough moons, what you can do is even on like almost 2-month cycles, you can be fracturing a new ore belt every day of the month for the people that have work while and mining alts that want to just go gobble those up. And if it's worth enough, I mean, as is all things in EVE, I'm sure that all of us will do this cost-benefit analysis at some point. And what'll end up happening is if the moons are worth it, you'll see refineries everywhere. And if the moons aren't worth it, you'll see nothing. Which might end up just being fun, especially when people start leaving or forgetting to fuel them and they start losing their shield and armor timers and suddenly explosions everywhere. But...
Well, so to piggyback on that, Izuki, I think one of the big things really is that it's always going to be harder for small corps to do any of this stuff, right? Because you have a limited number of people, and within that group of people, you probably have an even limited number of actual like content creators, right? And whether that's mining content or PvE content or PvP content, you've got a limited number. So, like, if and I'm sure that there are ridiculous corps out there that, like, if a certain director isn't online, like, you can't use a larger mining ship than X, like, so-and-so isn't on, you can't use your T2, like, but, that's the kind of thing that I think you're going to run into, is that people, like, you need a certain critical mass of people in order for these activities to generate some kind of content and some kind of fun per hour for your members. So, well, I think that, like, Lazerhawks, IRS, and HK will probably do a lot of this stuff, like, casually. I don't know that maybe some of the corps that could really benefit from this, which are the smaller corps, will have the internal will and drive to actually, like, kind of suffer through all of the effort that's going to go into actually establishing, like, a working pipeline for ore in turning that into industry products.
I'd imagine, at least as far as smaller corps go, like, they wouldn't take full advantage of their moons, but I don't know what moons are going to be what value. But if, say, one is worth more, like, you could cherry pick one, and I'm sure a lot of the smaller corps will at least throw one binary down and pull up at least one ore for a corp effort.
I mean,
I'm really looking forward to the inevitable mining drama that's going to happen in Rage when somebody starts to cherry pick certain ores.
I mean, what are you guys going to do when the moons actually end up being good and the big and the powerful mining corps come to take your C6s from you for the moons?
Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do. We're just gonna have to protect our renters harder. Although they already have enough trouble remembering to fuel their bosses,
Oh yeah, weren't you going to give us a PSA about how to not lose 40 billion ISK ship hangers?
The short answer is log in, scan your chain, and do your hauling, boys and girls.
There you have it from Hard
Don't go
Knocks
A-
themselves.
Don't
how
go
to-
AFK for 6 months.
I mean, it happens to your same issue, you know, don't go AFK with Vehement sitting in your azbel. You're gonna have a bad day. Well, I think that's all the topics. I hope that we covered a lot of good ground here, and I'm sure there's some more we could dig into, but at some point we'll cross over some thresholds that might have been better questions for another day for another main topic. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to talk about or discuss?
I'm good.
I'll
No,
take
yeah, I
this,
think
taking the
that
silence
covers
as like
it.
we're good to go. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys very much for coming on and having a chat. I mean, I think this was great. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from the variety of different places that people are listening to it live, and I'm sure we'll get more when we go. But thank you, all three of you, for giving your time and your insight into tonight's podcast, and everybody that's listening or watching live, thank you for coming to that as well. I should be back and actually pumping these out a bit more frequently, so we're going to be having another one in the not too distant future so we can get the ball rolling again, because the rest of my fall schedule looks a lot less terrible than October did. So thank you again for everybody, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.